All right. Welcome all. I wanted to welcome you today, and for those watching the replay or listening today to Halen House's monthly educational talk series. And for June, we are going to be in the social aspect of our series. And the title is Shining a Light on Social Unwellness. Let's talk. For those that do not know us, Halen House is a nonprofit in Central Oregon whose mission is healing the root cause and effects of trauma, creating health, resilience, and wholeness. At Halen House, we want to provide, and we provide education, tools, resources, and support to the community to learn about trauma and opportunities to heal, which are available through holistic complementary treatments and practitioners to build resilience and wholeness for a person. We know from personal experiences and the research, we know that there are 6 areas that get affected: physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, nutritional, and social. In experiencing life, many times our body, mind, and spirit will do okay, but then there are big traumatic events or many little traumas that get stuck in our body, and it can add up over time. So we can become, many of these parts can become unhealthy and even toxic in this stuck pattern. So we want everybody to know that there is hope, and you can change any of these areas and all these areas if you want to have changes. We are very resilient as human beings and as a whole. So today, our June presenter is Sunny Massey, an intuitive advocate, facilitator, and guide, who is also part of our Halen House team and board member. Sunny is a personal transformational coach with an insane thirst for understanding the human condition and helping people improve their lives. So we want to welcome Sunny back as a presenter on this important topic today. So welcome, Sunny.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for choosing to be here. And like Maria had said, this month's talk is on the vector of social. And so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen so that I can stay on track with some talking points. Let's see. There we go. Oh, okay, that's your screen.
Oh, that's my screen. Okay, wait a minute.
Okay.
Oops. Okay. Little technical difficulties.
All right.
Let's see, where did it go?
It says host disabled participant screen sharing. So you need to get that back to me.
Yes. Sorry, let's see. It disappeared. Okay. Where did it go? Oh, there we go. Stop share. Sorry. Okay, there we go. Let's see if you can do that.
Let's see. I'm trying. Okay. Did it give me the screen?
Let's see.
Yeah. Can you see my screen?
No.
Oh, okay. It sent me a note saying that you took the controls away, so.
Oh. Let's see. Sorry about that. Let's see. Okay.
Guess we should have tested around this before.
I guess so. Okay. Okay, see if that.
Do you see my screen?
No.
Okay.
Let's see. I've got you.
Oh, wait a minute. Here we go. Here
We
we go.
just need a second.
There we
There
go.
we go. There we
Okay.
go.
All right. Here we go. Okay, so shining a light on social unwellness. And as Maria said, the vector that we're talking about is the one of eight of the areas of what really define wellness, and that we need to pay attention to, I would say, equally. It's not something where you can give more attention to one thing at the expense of another. These are all things that are important to our well-being. Specifically, I just want to read what social health is defined as: the quality of your relationships with friends, family, teachers, and others you are in contact with, staying clear of those who do not treat you with respect and tolerance, being willing to improve relationships and work out differences with others. So that would be like what we would say is just, a general definition of social wellness. What interested me in speaking on this topic is a few years back, I had the chance to read a book that was written by Johann Hari called Lost Connections. And it was one of several books that I got a chance to read that was, at the time, the statistics that were being reported was that the population at large was approximately 13% of the population that was medicated for depression and anxiety. And that's a pretty alarming number of folks that were being treated, because when you consider that there's a whole nother population that isn't being treated but yet is still suffering, it made me interested in hearing what he had to say and what he had been finding out through his research, because he's a CNN reporter and traveled the world and had lots of interaction and dialogue with lots of different people, cultures, and so anyways, he caught my interest. And then as I started to follow this topic, I learned here recently that some of his points that he makes in the book are directly affecting the numbers in the US population. What I'd like to do is back up here for just a moment and show you it's about a 7-minute video on YouTube that I think would give you a taste of what he's concluding and what he's wanting the public to learn. 1 second here, let me get my screens changed out, and we'll watch his video. This is on YouTube, and it's one of many. He has some longer ones, but this is the one that I think kind of gets right to the point. And if there's any commercials, I apologize, because I don't have the premium account. So here we go. Excuse me, I do have to ask, is everybody able to hear this?
No, it's not
Okay.
coming up.
Okay, 1 second here. Let me double check this. It occurred to me that I've screen shared before and had this problem. So hang on a second here. Let's see. There we go. All right, that should be the fix. Let me back this up. Okay, can you hear it now?
No.
All right, 1 second. Oh, goodness.
Technology.
Mm-hmm. All right, hang on. Optimize for video clip. Let's see if that does it. And
That's changing.
okay, 1 second here. Turn it up.
It's lines right now. It hasn't, is it playing?
Yes.
No, it's not working, unfortunately.
Okay. All right, 1 second here. Let's see what we can do.
You might have to not have the other one up and then.
Okay. Let's see. Share.
There we go.
Doctor.
Can you hear it?
And I'd explained
Yep.
that I had this feeling like pain was leaking out of me and I couldn't control it. I couldn't regulate it. I felt quite ashamed of it. And my doctor told me a story that I now realize was really oversimplified. My doctor said, we know why people feel this way. Scientists have proved it. There's a chemical called serotonin in people's brains. It makes them feel good. Some people are naturally lacking it or have an imbalance in it. Obviously, you're one of them. All we need to do is give you these drugs, you're going to be fine. So I started taking an antidepressant called Seroxat, and I got quite a lot of relief initially. For a couple of months, I felt a lot better, quite a big boost. And then this feeling of pain started to come back. So I went back to my doctor. He said, clearly I didn't give you a high enough dose. He gave me a higher dose. Again, I felt better. Again, this feeling of pain came back, and I was really in that cycle of taking the drug, taking a higher dose, feeling a bit better, and so on. Until for 13 years, I was taking the maximum possible dose you're allowed to take. At the end of which, I still felt like shit, and I was experiencing all sorts of horrible side effects, huge weight gain, all sorts of problems. And I wanted to understand, well, what's going on here? Because I'm doing everything that I'm being told to do, and I'm still in a lot of pain. And there seems to be something going wrong all around me in the wider culture. What's going on here? Can it really be that there's just some malfunction in everyone's brains at the same time? So I decided to go on a long journey to try to find the answer to these mysteries. So I ended up traveling over 40,000 miles. I went to interview the leading experts in the world about what causes depression and anxiety and what solves them. And just people have very different perspectives, from an Amish village in Indiana, because the Amish have very low levels of depression, to a city in Brazil where they banned advertising to see if that would make people feel better, to a university in the United States where they were giving people magic mushrooms to see if that would help. Ask me later. And I learned lots of things, but to me, the heart of it is, I realized, until I went to my doctor when I was a teenager, I thought my depression was all in my head, meaning, I was just being weak, I needed to man up. And then for the next 13 years, I thought my depression was all in my head, meaning it was just a chemical imbalance in my brain. But what I learned is there's scientific evidence for 9 different causes of depression and anxiety. 2 of them are indeed biological. Your genes can make you more sensitive to these problems, and there are real brain changes that begin when you become depressed that can make it harder to get out. But most of the causes, 7 of them, they're not in our heads. They're factors in the way we're living. And that opens up a very different way of understanding why we feel like this and how we can find our way out. Everyone in this room knows, you guys all know, that you've got natural physical needs. Obviously, you need food, you need water, you need shelter, you need clean air. If I took any of them away from you, you'd be in a lot of trouble really quickly, right? There's equally strong evidence that human beings have natural psychological needs. You need to feel you belong. You need to feel your life has meaning and purpose. You need to feel that people see you and value you. You need to feel you've got a future that makes sense. Our culture is good at lots of things. I'm glad to be alive today. But we've been getting less and less good at meeting these deep underlying psychological needs for people. And it's not the only thing that's going on by any means, but I think it's the key reason why this crisis is rising and rising as each year passes. So that can sound a bit, abstract. So I want to give you some concrete examples. One of the causes of depression and anxiety that I write about is disconnection from other people. We are the loneliest society there's ever been. There's a study that asks Americans, how many close friends do you have who you could call on in a crisis? And when they started doing it years ago, the most common answer was 5. Today, the most common answer is none. There are more people have nobody to turn to than any other option. We are just behind the Americans in the international league tables of loneliness. And I wanted to understand this better, so I spent a lot of time interviewing an amazing man called Professor John Cacioppo, who's at the University of Chicago. Tragically, he just died. He wasn't an old man, it's a terrible loss. He was the leading expert in the world on loneliness. And Professor Cacioppo proved many things. So he showed, for a human being, if you become acutely lonely, that releases as much of the stress hormone cortisol into your bloodstream as if you were punched in the face by a stranger. Being acutely lonely is devastating for your health. It's as bad for you as smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being really quite obese. And I remember asking him, why is being lonely so stressful? And him saying, why do we exist? Right, many reasons. One of them is our ancestors on the savannas of Africa were really good at one thing. They weren't bigger than the animals they took down a lot of the time. They weren't faster than the animals they took down a lot of the time, but they were much better at banding together into groups and cooperating. Just like bees evolved to need a hive, humans evolved to need a tribe. And we are the first humans ever to try to disband our tribes. And if you think about those circumstances where we evolved, if you got cut off from the tribe, you were stressed and flooded with cortisol and anxious for a really good reason, right? You were about to die, you were in terrible danger. Those are still the impulses we have as human beings. That's the species we are. That's what we need. And when I learned all this, and of course Professor Cacioppo proved that loneliness causes depression. It's just not just a correlation. Of course, depression can also cause loneliness because you retreat. There's a reciprocal relationship. But he proved that depression causes loneliness. So I was thinking, well, what's the antidepressant for that, right? If you think about the cow analogy, what's the cow for that problem? Discovered there is one. There's one not very far from where we are. So one of the heroes of my book, Lost Connections, is a man called Dr. Sam Everington, who's a doctor in East London, poor part of East London. He's a GP. It's actually where I lived for a long time, though sadly Sam was never my doctor. And Sam was really uncomfortable. He had loads of patients coming to him with terrible depression and anxiety. And he'd been told in medical school, even though he knew the science was much more sophisticated, just tell them they've got a chemical imbalance, that they can't understand more sophisticated stories than that, and just drug them, right? And Sam was really uncomfortable with that. Like me, he's not opposed to chemical antidepressants. He thinks they do have some value, but he could see they weren't solving the problem for a lot of his patients. So he decided to pioneer a different approach. One day, a woman came to him called Lisa Cunningham, who I got to know quite well. Lisa had been shut away in her home with crippling depression and anxiety for 7 years. And Sam said to Lisa, don't worry, I'll carry on giving you these drugs. I'm also going to prescribe something else. I'm going to prescribe for you to take part in a group. There was an area behind the doctor's surgery that was known as Dog Shit Alley, which gives you a sense of what it was like, backed onto a park. He said to Lisa, what I'd like you to do is come and turn up a couple of times a week, meet with a group of other depressed and anxious people. I'm going to turn out and support you. And we're going to turn Dog Shit Alley into something nice. The first meeting with anxiety, literally. But a couple of things happened as the group kept on meeting. The first thing was they discovered they had something to talk about that wasn't how shit they felt, right? Most of the time with depressed and anxious people, we either drug them or we give them a place to talk about their pain, and both those things have value. But in this group, they had something completely different. They decided they were going to learn gardening. They started to get their fingers in the soil. They started to learn the rhythms of the seasons. These were inner city extenders, didn't know anything about these things, right? They started to apply for a gardening qualification. Another thing happened. They started to form a tribe. They started to form a group. And they did what human beings do when we form tribes. They started to solve each other's problems. For example, it's an extreme example, there's one guy in the group who'd been thrown out of his home and he was sleeping on the night bus, right? Everyone else in the group was like, of course you're depressed if you're sleeping on the night bus. They started pressuring the local council, Tower Hamlets Council, to get this guy a home. They succeeded, they got him a home. It was the first time they'd done something for someone else in years. It made them feel great. The way Lisa put it to me, as the garden began to bloom, we began to bloom.
Okay, so let's see, close that and back to this screen. Oops. So pretty good video, I think. He gets right to the point and makes the connection that a lot of our social problems are moving away from what was tribes that we survived in. And we have a lot of individualism going on. And apparently the US is in worse shape than the UK. So I think that's a little alarming as well. Here in this recent report and the statistics that I have up on the screen right now, you can see where the issue of loneliness is pushing 61%. And I looked for the statistics. It appears that those that are medicated are pushing 21%. So when he wrote the book, like I said, it was around 13%. But still, these numbers are just alarming.
Yeah.
And
Quick, Sunny. Your screen share is not back on if you
oh,
wanted to.
shoot. Okay, hang on a second here. Ah! Okay, there we go.
There we go. There we go.
Thanks for interrupting.
Uh-huh.
So here we go. So 61% in the US right now are reporting loneliness. And this was actually done in, let's see, 61% in 2019. Okay, so this is before the pandemic. Okay, so I think, again, this is just shocking numbers. And loneliness and who is being treated for depression and anxiety, like I said, are two different statistics, but the number went from 20 or 13%. I don't remember when he wrote the book. Let's see. I don't remember the book. Anyways, but it was a few years before that, and went from 13% to now what is 21%. So anyhow, the thing that I find significant about the whole issue of loneliness is it's right here. Needs unmet. You know, it's that subjective feeling of, you know, having one's affiliative needs unmet. And when we talk about, you know, what is the social skill that is often assumed is good, but maybe really lacks in, you know, maybe more of the population than we realize, is one, the communication skills. And it's not just the ability to communicate your own emotional experience, but it's also to be able to be in a conversation and communicate with the other person through the other skills like listening and what it means to develop that ability to be seen, heard, understood, and feel that connection. So when we talk about like coming from, you know, Halen House, and that we know that, you know, trauma is occurring and people are having these experiences in which they maybe don't have the skill set for communication to talk about, and then they end up not being able to share their experience or feel like they're being understood or heard. And again, it causes more and more emotional wound. And that's why I want to read you this quote. Your trauma is valid, even if other people have experienced worse. Even if someone else who went through the same experience doesn't feel debilitated by it. Even if it could have been avoided. Even if it happened a long time ago. Even if no one knows, your trauma is real and valid, and you deserve a space to talk about it. It isn't desperate or pathetic or attention seeking. It's self-care. It's inconceivably brave, and regardless of the magnitude of your struggle, you're allowed to take care of yourself by processing and unloading some of the pain you carry. Your pain matters, your experience matters, your healing matters. No one and nothing and no one can take that away. I think that is so potent because so often we are carrying around trauma that we are not sharing and discussing, which brings me to, again, the definition of trauma right here. Here's the operative word, or right here, emotional trauma. You know, it is without a doubt not visible. Not all wounds are visible. If you look here at the symptoms of PTSD, and you think about all of the little traumas, which we call little T's, okay, little T's of trauma. They're not the big, obvious traumatic events of maybe witnessing something truly horrific, but maybe it's on a smaller scale. You know, feeling different, not being accepted, social isolation, hello pandemic, feeling humiliated, not being able to do what others do, moving to a new home or a significant change in the home, not being listened to, you know, there we go, communication, being misunderstood, failing at a task, getting confused or overwhelmed. There are so many examples of little T traumas. And when you think of the definition of trauma and you know that it's an emotional wound, and then you think of the communication that is necessary, not only the emotional intelligence that you need, but then the social intelligence that you need to be able to communicate with someone about it, and then develop a connection, you know, because you are being able to share your truth and be authentic. Again, there's list after list of what little T's are. First one here is poverty, but the second one again is social isolation. There's accounts of bullying. I mean, there's just so many ways that we can start to experience little trauma. What I think is interesting about this graphic here is on the wheel of power and privilege. Not that that's the topic I want to talk about, but when you look at that wheel and you look at the center and you say, okay, power, you know, is in the center of the wheel, people who are closest to the center of the wheel in whatever profile that they occupy in public. Well, it doesn't take long to figure out that just about everybody can get marginalized in some way, whether it's gender, whether it's your language, whether it's your skin color, your ability, your sexuality, whatever, your mental health, your body size. And all of a sudden, these become really, really clear and obvious ways in which people are carrying around some emotional wounds. And it's also another area where we have, as a community member, have to really think hard about how do we look at other people and what kinds of judgments do we make that then, you know, perpetuate this pain and this suffering. Again, I don't want to get into all the details of this graphic, but I find it interesting that you know, you could land in any one area and all of a sudden realize, ooh, this is pretty painful, and this really separates me, you know, from feeling like I have a tribe. And we do need to check ourselves. And I don't mean to sound preachy about this, but it's like if we really want to make a difference and have a different outcome in our society, I think it really begins with being brave enough to share our stories, but also probably a, you know, oh, what's the word? Mature enough to be a good listener and able to develop that new awareness for what others are going through and have those conversations where they feel safe to share, and we can share as well. This is another thing that I had found on the internet, and I thought that it was important to also throw up, because if we consider that most people have little t trauma, there's so often that little trauma becomes codependency. So I wanted to read through this list for you. Codependency is a response to trauma. So, I mean, there's a pretty good chance that most of us have some codependency type of behaviors, but codependency feels shameful. Codependency is unhealthy, is an unhealthy focus or on other people's problems, feelings, and needs. Codependents are very sensitive to criticism. Codependents are super responsible. Codependents wall off their own feelings. Codependents don't ask for what they need. Codependents give, and even when it hurts. And codependency isn't a mental health diagnosis. So you can change your codependent patterns. Well, the reason why I mention all of this is because, you know, when we look at how many of us have shut down and not shared, you know, what we've walled up, just like what it says, codependents wall off their feelings. It's like, oh gosh, we have a whole society walking around, you know, not really telling the truth on how what's going on in their lives. And then this is another quote I found that I liked as well. Wounded children have a rage, a sense of failed justice that burns in their souls. What do they do with that rage? Excuse me. Since they would never harm another, they turn that rage inward. They become the target of their own rage. They repeat in their thoughts the same harmful words that were spoken to them. They must lash out, but the only ones weak enough to attack are themselves. And I'm pretty sure that there's a lot of people that can relate and resonate with this quote. So that's why I read it. And then the last quote that I'll share with you here is, some people survive and talk about it. Some people survive and go silent. Some people survive and create. Everyone deals with unimaginable pain in their own way, and everyone is entitled to that without judgment. So the next time you look at someone's life covetously, remember you may not want to endure what they are enduring right now at this moment, whilst they sit so quietly before you, looking like a calm ocean on a sunny day. Remember how vast the ocean's boundaries are, whilst somewhere the water is calm in another place in the very same ocean, there is a colossal storm. And so it brings me to my last point, and then I'm going to open this up to a talk, is another book that I have read and believe very much to be a valuable book is called Frientimacy. And depending on where you're at in your social skills and your wellness, your social wellness, there may be, I think, challenges to each of us and how we might improve our frientimacy skills. So Shasta Nelson, the author of this book, you know, her quote is, most of our loneliness isn't from not knowing enough people, but from not feeling close enough to a few. And that's really true, is are we really truly spending time growing our frientimacy skills? I think this is interesting. Again, just a few last points. You know, the 50 social skills that were posted for kids, I thought, no, that's pretty much for all people. We all probably need to do a review and really consider how are we doing in these, in these areas of where we might have strengths, or maybe we're closing off and not really asserting our skill set in this area. So there's two sides of that. Are you someone that could use, the help of somebody else initiating first, or are you someone who really initiates well, but could really benefit someone else? So, and then this was another little acronym. So before you think, before you speak, the acronym is think. Is it true? Is it helpful? Is it inspiring? Is it necessary? And is it kind? I think that is something that when we choose to use our communication with others, we really need to consider that language is powerful, communication is essential, and words wound. And you can choose the opposite of that. And that ends my talk right here at being the change you wish to see in the world. So if we don't want to have a crisis on our hands with a bunch of lonely people, I think that it's up to some of us to give it our best shot to make a difference. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen, and then we'll open it up and talk about this. So my first question is, was there any part of what I just presented that really jumped out at you and gave you a light bulb moment?
Well, yes. And we'll see if if he's got any comments. Thank you, Sunny, for quite the presentation. For me, I think that was definitely, there's lots of things to think about and ponder. And I think as a whole, especially right now, over the last year and a half. So, we need to really think about all this stuff, and then of getting back out into the world as things are opening up, of how we can be these changes. Because I think there's definitely been things that have not been working. It's incredibly sad that the loneliness and things where that's becoming more and more.
We were in trouble before the pandemic, so that's what is just amazing.
Yeah, and the idea that we are we're disconnecting that tribe, which is what all this stuff is, that we do a lot of things, and I think we are helpful with some of this, with people in being in different places, and as you get older, and some of the being in a not being in your home or around your family, being in a community of the retirement or more assistance, but there's still, that's a huge loneliness part. And then and unfortunately with everybody being shut in and all that's
well,
it's not healthy. It's not been healthy, and it's made it more.
And the lack of tribe is happening at all age groups. So that's the thing that, we can't just target that as, that's an older person's, concern or,
Yeah.
something
No,
that's
true.
happening for them. They actually show that the numbers are just blowing way out on the young people. I mean, it's just terrible.
Yeah.
What's really happening for everybody.
Yeah. No, I know, and it's true. I think, and we've made, I think we've made it. I mean, there's lots of distractions and everything with technology and all the different options, or if you're trying to survive, like what you said with the wheel of some of these things that are depending on where somebody is, if they're secure enough with some of this, or if they're in a lot of unsecure areas in many parts of their life, that makes it even more, some of
and
this.
part of what I wanted to point out is how quickly somebody can experience a disconnect in when they're being judged and there becomes a line in the sand. Then the bond and the connection is jeopardized or broken, and that's where we as society have to really think twice about how harshly we're viewing a person different from ourselves and what kinds of behaviors we display, what we say and do. And I use, when I have more time, one of my reference points to this issue was the country was in civil unrest during Vietnam. And when my dad had been killed in Vietnam, I was just little. So I went into grade school. I was 4, but when I got into grade school, it's pretty, I mean, the war had still been going on, but it's pretty obvious that they had said, oh, myself and my brother had lost our dad in Vietnam. When you consider there was so many people protesting it, and they had a different view of maybe the parents that, were military, okay, or had been involved in military. Right there is a line in the sand, whether we know it or not as a little kid. And the thing that had always confused me for the longest time, and I didn't know if it was one of the few things, I didn't know if it was the fact that my dad was killed in Vietnam, or was it that my mom was a teenager when she had me, so she was super young, okay? She was being judged, we already know that. And then the other part was that my parents were not only young, but they are my mother and my stepfather then were partiers and pretty much alcoholics. So whatever the reasons were that we were being judged, myself and my brother were not the children to invite over to play with, okay? For the longest time in my life. I mean, I'm only still assuming, what was it? What was it about us? But that's what I'm saying about deep shame. And when you really dig in and you say, wow, we pass judgment on young people, on, all different types of people. And this gets deeply embedded that we're, we have these emotional traumas that we're also perpetrators of. Yeah. So anyway.
Well, and it's hard when you're a child, you don't understand. And even when you grow up as adult, you don't understand for mostly many years. Never know. And you may not, and some people may never figure that out. And it will bother them their whole entire lives and cause a chain reaction of how they view the world and everything. And so, And if you don't have if you don't have someone to help you go in, you know, to understand it, then it stays in your head.
Yeah. Well, and
yeah.
that's what I was saying about like us as adults now. And if we're looking at a whole society that has all these emotional unmet needs of being belonging and being included and feeling like they have a connection and a genuine friend and somebody that they could call, you know, we all have our role to play or to improve upon, if you will, on the health scale, like wherever you're at on that health scale, you know, if it's helping someone else or helping yourself and improving your ability to communicate clearly, saying, hey, I have these needs and I'm hoping you can help me, you know, or you know, again, developing your skill set to, you know, improve that. And that's why I love the fact that, like, if Halen House is looking at holistic ways to improve people's well-being in those 6 or 8 vectors of wellness, then part of what we also have to look at is how do we help encourage building healthy tribes, you know, for people so that they could start to establish connections.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
And that's where we need to really hold, you know, space for as, you know, as often and as long as we can to keep pulling people in. And Steve, we haven't heard from you. Is there anything that you wanted to chime in?
Oh, you're still. I'll unmute.
You're on mute, hon.
You're on mute.
There we go. So I was struck by the number of people that are lonely. And then also I felt like, well, I'm not the only one. There was something towards the end. There were a lot of points in there that were very interesting, but there was something towards the end that said something about, you know, someone may look calm and seem to be on top of everything, but who knows what's boiling under the surface and what sort of trauma they've been through. So there's some, I don't know, comfort for me in that. I'm older and I live alone. I recently broke up with my girlfriend and I had serious abdominal surgeries a month or 2 ago that I'm still recovering from. So I'm feeling some of those things, and this has been helpful for me to give me a range of things to think about.
Good.
Yeah. And thank you so much for sharing, because truly the more that we know what's going on with you, the more that we can, as a community, help to, you know, support you and you know, learn. I mean, you saw in the video how these people were brought together not necessarily to discuss all of their, you know, I mean, they were definitely not focusing on what their pains were, but they were also coming together and problem solving. And, you know, sometimes it's nice just to be invited out to have a dinner or, you know, a coffee or something, or, I mean, a walk around the river.
I've just, you know, recently discovered Meetup, and I think it's going to be very helpful for me just to have different people to talk to and interests that I can share with people. And I'm an architect and I'm still practicing, and I've got to duck out to a job, so I'm going to take off. But I wanted to thank you both for having me. And
yeah, no, you're welcome, and look for more, and great that you have meetups and everything. Yeah. So have a wonderful day.
Good. Thank you very much.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Okay. So
Yeah,
with
no, that was, and I want to thank you, Sunny, for that. And and we'll wrap it up here just a minute. But yeah, I do love that quote that he was mentioning too about the ocean, because it's so true. We always want to have this, oh, I'm fine and everything, and it's a beautiful day, or it's happy, perfect, and all that stuff. And we don't always know. I mean, we may look like we're all good, but it's a storm, in many places, or we're just trying to survive. So it's a good thing to remember and try to have that connection too, to let people know.
It takes so much work to really genuinely create a safe relationship and a bond where someone can be authentic. And then as we are having that opportunity to be authentic and, find new skills, and, someone can share with us like, something, a real solution, when we can take that mask off and stop, not wanting to be a burden to people, you know what I mean? And so
that needs, one of the things we just need to kind of let go of that, some of that terminology and language and things, and
exactly.
is just to know, because we are, as humans and as beings, we are a society, we are communal, we are a tribe. I mean, and I think there's good things about individualism, but there's been of late, I think for quite a while, it's overtaken, and the balance of what the importance for everybody, what community is, from that, and that intergenerational thing to have when you had multi-generations and different people around. So I think that is, hopefully people will kind of remember that that is our strength, not a weakness. So to rely on each other, and to be able to listen and be there. I mean, that's one of the things I've learned over the last number of years, of just the importance of being there for people, and witnessing and listening, for myself, to be heard as a person, but then also be there and truly listen and be part of a group, because I was not used to that. And so it's made a world of difference. So thank you, Sunny, for everything for today. You gave us lots of food for thought, and I hope everybody that will be listening or catching the replay will look more of this up, and make these connections, both with us with Halen House, and your friends, family, and anyone new. Get out there. I know right now we're all a little iffy. Things have been crazy, but we will get there, I know. And so we want to thank you for coming and watching us, or the replay, and then we will catch you on the next series. So thank you very much. So
thank you.
yes.
All right.
Okay.